All right, Star Wars fans, it was Twas the night before The Last Jedi, and all the Star Wars fans were geeking out just like all of us are here at the Brick City Blockade Star Wars Podcast Network. We're here with a special episode of the Cantina with my co-host Jim Roberge in the studio here. We've got Christopher James Letty on location at Octu there with Luke and his porgs. And guys, just excited. Everybody else on the network has had the chance to share their thoughts about, what they're hoping for, what they think they'll see. Again, I'm just going to let everybody know right up front, the three of us have not seen the film right now, although our good friend Scott Inch is in the theater right now in Scotland as we're recording. And we have told him, do not say anything, because the rest of us still have to wait about 24 hours to see it at the time of this recording. Hopefully we can get this edited and out, and so you can listen to this and our silly final thoughts before the film actually hits, because we don't know anything.
Nothing.
And I guess, Jim, I know specifically we were talking right before we recorded. You and I have just tried not to talk Star Wars at all, and we frequently talk throughout the week, and nobody wants to say anything to anybody. We want to go into this film as spoiler free as possible. So, and Chris, I know you're kind of in the same boat, but Jim, what have you done to this point to be about as pristine as you can at this point?
I've avoided, I'm not a big Facebook user anyway, but I pop on there a few times a week, and I haven't been doing that. I'm a big Reddit user. But I have completely stayed away from anything that's on my front page coming from the Star Wars subreddits that I subscribe to, and just kind of stayed in other non-Star Wars related subreddits. And other than that, I mean, it's really kind of just putting my head in the sand, to be honest with you. I've even been hesitant at times to check in on any of our Facebook Messenger chat rooms that we all have going on for these various podcasts, and the main ones that I'm also involved in, and just trying to avoid it all. I want to go into that theater and just not know any more than the little bit that I've read in Variety magazine, entertainment magazines, and then what I've seen in the trailers. It's probably going to be the most pristine, to use your word, that I possibly could be to go into a Star Wars movie.
So, Chris, the excitement at this point is palpable. I mean, it's at a fever pitch. We've seen a lot of people. We've talked about it on the network with Robin Vogt and Scott Inch, and just getting everybody so excited. We've had the world premiere by this point. We've seen a lot of our friends in the Star Wars community that were lucky enough to go to screenings. They've been sharing their thoughts. We won't share what they are on this podcast. But Chris, what have you done? Have you put your head in the proverbial sand like Jim has?
I really have tried to. Facebook, I've barely. I only check the notifications, and if anything is pertinent, I'll click on it. But I haven't scrolled through the feeds. I've stayed off Twitter for the most part, other than our own group chat, just retweeting stuff there, and I've completely avoided Instagram. And I've already, I have come across a couple things, couple headlines and stuff here and there, but other than that, I've pretty much stayed clean to this point.
I am envious of both of you. So we're gonna play a little. We're gonna play a little game with the both of you, just because I've already shared my thoughts. Our listeners don't need us to hear all of that again. But Jim and Chris, what I want to do is a little game that we come up with. We're inconsistent here on the Cantina. We were talking before we aired. We don't even know what episode number is this, so we don't need no stinking episode numbers. But Jim came up with a little fun game that I want to try with both of you, and it's will, won't, please don't. So we're going to talk about some of the different things that you hope you see, hope you don't see, et cetera, et cetera. So, Chris, because you're the guest on the Cantina this episode, I'm going to start with you. And this is just your personal opinion, your speculation, your own headcanon. What do you think we will see in this film, The Last Jedi?
Well, I mean, so I have avoided pretty much as many TV spots as possible. So even, I don't have the imagery there if anything's been put out there. But I think we're gonna see Rey pulled to a place in the Star Wars universe that hasn't been touched upon yet. Some unknown area of the Force. That's my biggest thing that I think we'll see.
Awesome. Jim, same question. What do you think we will see in this film?
I think it's going to be a new side of Luke Skywalker. When we pretty much left him before the new trilogy, at the end of Return of the Jedi, I would say that he still had a lot of that innocent farm boy mentality in there. I mean, he was obviously a Jedi during that movie, but to me, there are still times where that comes out. And since then, he's seen a lot of you know what, and he might even be a little bit jaded. So I'm just really interested to see who he's become, and I think we will see that he's become somebody very different from who we remember from the original trilogy.
You know, Jim, you and I are both Luke fans, and I literally cannot wait for anything more that we add to the lore of who Luke Skywalker is. And we haven't really talked about it. I'd love to at some point, probably post, The Last Jedi, after a lot of people, a lot of our fans and listeners have had the chance to listen to it. I love to dive back into the Journey to the Last Jedi, the Legends of Luke Skywalker book. I feel like there's a lot of great things in there. And I don't think it was necessarily a prerequisite to read it for the film, but you learn a lot about it. We've haven't had the opportunity to talk about how Battlefront 2 might impact the legend of Luke Skywalker. Again, another future topic I'd love to talk about. I could talk about Luke Skywalker all day. Jim, I'll come back to you on this one. On the other side of that, again, personal opinion, what do you hope that we won't see in this film?
Well, what I believe we won't see is another Death Star. And by that, I mean any type of rehash of original trilogy plot points. That was a big complaint for a lot of people, probably rightfully so, on The Force Awakens. I love the movie personally, and I agree that it's there. It's kind of hard to avoid what's staring you in the face on that one. But I think this is going to be different. And while there's going to be parallels to Empire Strikes Back, I mean, one of the big scenes in the trailer are a bunch of the new version of the AT-ATs lumbering to come in against a presumably hidden base. So that kind of draws a lot of parallels right there, and we're not even getting into the Jedi Master in a secluded location with a basically student. But I think this is going to feel more like the first completely fresh story using characters from the original trilogy. Force Awakens was, mostly there, but this is going to be even so more different from anything in the original trilogy. So that's we won't see is any type of those rehash of original trilogy plot points.
I certainly hope you're right, Jim. And to your point with and Chris talking about a little bit of collecting here, Star Wars fandom kind of was in an uproar a little bit a couple months ago because on Force Friday, I think there was some Revell models that had they used some old stock images of space, and it happened to have a Death Star in it.
I know.
People lost their mind. Jim, I hope to heck you're right, but I don't know if you're right or wrong. So if there's another Death Star in this movie, am I going to get up and walk out of the theater? Probably not, but I hope we don't see that either. That's I hope we won't see. Chris, piggybacking maybe a little bit after what Jim said, what do you hope that we won't see in this film?
Well, I mean, it's something that I don't think we'll see is the Resistance being very successful. I think they're it's not that I don't want them to be successful, but I think that they're going to take a big hit, be pushed back quite a bit. That's just my feeling. I don't know. I don't know why, but I just have a feeling that's how it's going to go.
And I think we've talked about this on a prior episode of the Cantina. I feel like the Resistance is smaller and more fragmented than the Rebellion ever was. And if you're reading a lot of the new canon books that have come out in the last couple of years, you kind of almost have a newfound respect for all the paranoia that was surrounding the rebellion back then, and where they had all of these things trying to converge together. And we've touched upon it in Rebels and some of the other books that I won't spoil because they've just come out within the last couple months. But yeah, I think you might be onto something there, Chris.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, not to spoil anything in the Poe Dameron comic book, but it really gives you a perspective of how small the Resistance is, and Leia, even thinks about how, they had a lot more, ammunition with the rebellion than they do with the Resistance, and she's at odds trying to get that all situated, and it convinced the galaxy that the First Order is, a threat. It's a little bit different landscape in this sequel trilogy than it was in the original trilogy.
And all those comics, those take place before The Force Awakens, right?
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
Correct.
So,
and also to Chris's point, it's the second one, and if there are going to be some parallels to just how the stories are put together, man, Empire Strikes Back did not end on a high note for the Rebels by any means. A good friend of mine has said many times that one of the things he really likes about Empire Strikes Back is the bad guys win. I mean, the end of that movie, the bad guys won when you really kind of look at it. So maybe what's in store here. And just to Chris's point, the Resistance is going to take even more of a beating.
So shifting gears slightly here, and Jim, I'll go back to you. This is your wish list. If you had the opportunity, obviously this film is in the can. Rian Johnson isn't changing anything. Even though you haven't seen it though, Jim, what's one thing that you really hope that we see as a fan?
Yeah, for me, I want to see Luke Skywalker and Leia have a scene together. That's one of my biggest things I think about this new trilogy is we already know that we're never going to see a scene with Luke, Leia, Han, and Chewie together. And I think they missed the boat. I mean, part of me hopes that maybe there was something filmed during The Force Awakens where, and we don't know about it, and it's going to be used in a future movie. I think that's kind of pie in the sky thinking. But it's kind of disappointing when you think about it, to wait so long for these characters to come back and to have seen them go through so much in the original trilogy and have them not ever be really reunited on screen as those characters. And so at the very least, I'm hoping that, one last time we get a scene with Luke and Leia together.
Yeah, that would tug on the heartstrings a little bit, wouldn't it, Chris?
Absolutely.
What do you think?
No, I mean, I can't disagree with Jim. That would be pretty awesome to see them reunite in some capacity. The one thing that I really want to see is I really want to see Force Ghosts or something along those lines. Qui-Gon, maybe the voice of Qui-Gon, or whether it be Yoda or Anakin or something like that. I think that would be a pretty cool touch to the movie.
Yeah. Oh, that's a good wish list there. So Jim, you can have your tinfoil hat on or you're not, but what's like one thing you wish you don't see? What's going to be the thing that's going to just break you as an individual if it happens?
It would be the killing of Luke Skywalker. I mean, if they kill him off, I'm not ready to see that. This is probably the last saga or trilogy that's going to involve the Skywalkers is my guess. I mean, we all know that Rian Johnson's been given another trilogy deal for Star Wars, and it's going to be something completely unrelated. So I hope if something is going to happen to Luke before the end of these three movies, that it doesn't happen in this one. That is really, I'm just not ready to see that guy go yet. That's for sure.
I would weep like a man-child.
There would be a great
I think
disturbance
we
in the
will all
force.
would.
Yeah, mostly just a child, but I certainly would weep openly about that. Chris, again, as a fan, what is one
Mhm.
thing that if you have the same thing as Jim, that's great. But what's one thing that would what's one thing that would just crush you if it ended up coming to
Uh,
fruition?
I mean, for me, I just do not want to see Rey turn to the dark side. I don't want to see that at all. um, I think she's going to flirt with it, or, like I said before, some unknown area of the Force. But yeah, no dark side Rey. Please don't.
Oh
Yeah,
God, I know. I'm
again,
there with you.
I would weep like a child.
Oh,
Yeah, raise my girl. So.
yeah,
Guys, I literally, Chris, unfortunately, I know you got to wait until Friday to see it.
yeah.
And Jim, I know you and I will be seeing it on Thursday here stateside. And we just talked about our good friend Scott Inch is in the theater right now. He'll actually probably be coming out of it soon. And Scott, I will fly over to Edinburgh and I will end you if you talk about all kidding aside, but no, and I mean we've talked about it on the network before too. We're gonna keep this a spoiler free, space for a while. We know some of our fans aren't going to be able to see it until later in the weekend, and we're going to try our best not to. I mean, if you guys think back to the Force Awakens, I mean there was, pardon my French, but there was a-holes out on Facebook, posting like Han dies and stuff and images, and you can't not see it. And if one of your friends likes it or comments on it, it's like it's there. So
Mhm.
we will in no way be participating in any of that. Our Facebook pages, we now have a private Facebook group for listeners and fans. So if you want to interact with the host and those in the Brick City Blockade, you can find that as part of our Facebook page, and we recommend you join, and it's a good safe space that will be spoiler free. Our Instagram, Twitter, all that's just going to be spoiler free. We haven't talked about it, but I would imagine it's going to be a while before we do a full breakdown as a podcast, doing a full review where we openly talk about some of these plot points. I know Robin and Sean from O'Neill Cinemas in Epping, New Hampshire tomorrow night are going to be doing some live reaction. It's going to be a spoiler-free review before and after. So, if you're on the fence about, I'm not going to be able to see the podcast, I'm not going to be able to see the movie for a little bit, don't worry. We're not going to spoil anything for you. Guys, Jim, Chris, any final thoughts?
Man, we've waited over, like you've said, you and I are big Luke Skywalker fans. 3 out of 4 of my points were Luke Skywalker related. Not to beat a dead horse, but I waited over 30 years to have a movie with Luke in it again. And now I had to wait another 2 years for Luke to be in a movie with a speaking role. So I am so ready for this. I cannot wait for tomorrow. Chris, I don't know how you're going to wait until Friday. I don't know how you're doing it.
I know. I couldn't help it with work, but I do have Friday off, so I have the whole day to prepare myself.
Very nice.
Yeah. No, I'm on the same boat as you guys. Super excited. Can't wait. Just gonna absorb this movie, first viewing, and then I don't know how many times I'm gonna see it, but probably a whole bunch. And hopefully we can all get together as a group and go see it at least one time.
Yeah, we need a group viewing, that's for sure.
We will make that happen. I know, guys, my final thought is, I know you probably both haven't seen it because you've been staying off social media, but there's a really funny thing going around Facebook right now that has Luke and Rey at the end of The Force Awakens, and Rey standing there holding the lightsaber out and like, all right, Luke, we've been holding this pose for 2 years now. We can't wait to see what the next thing happens. So yeah,
Oh, man.
for everybody at the Brick City Blockade, we hope everybody really enjoys the experience of getting a new Star Wars film. It's become synonymous with the holiday season, and it's I don't think any of us can be any more excited. So guys, let's start with a little bit of plug time. This is Christopher James Letty, Vintage Viewport. Where can they find you on social media after The Last Jedi?
After The Last Jedi, at Vintage Report on Twitter and Instagram.
And Jim.
You can find me after The Last Jedi, and because I haven't been on Twitter for about 5 days, I haven't even opened that thing. At Red5Jim.
And you can find me on Twitter and Instagram after The Last Jedi at Jedi Scavenger SW on Twitter and Instagram. I probably said that twice. I'll edit that out afterwards. Guys, head over to the brand new BrickCityBlockade.com. We just updated the website. It loads faster now. It's a little bit easier to read, so hopefully check it out. Let us know what you thought. We just had an article posted yesterday. Our own very own Robin Vogt had the opportunity to send some questions to Claudia Gray. Yes, that Claudia Gray that has written 3 Star Wars books that happen to be in my top 5 of, most recently with Leia, Princess of Alderaan. Just such a pleasure to hear from her. And she's a fan herself of Leia, and she's had the opportunity to write about her several different times. And it's just, so check out that article, the conversation with Claudia Gray on the website. Head over to SoundCloud, iTunes, Google Play, subscribe to the podcast, leave a rating. It's one of the best ways that gets more exposure for the podcast network to others, so we can bring in even more guests and have more epic conversations about Star Wars in the Star Wars community. So guys, I think it's going to do it. We'll catch you on the other side of The Last Jedi. And like we always say, may the Force be with you.
Always.
Always.